Hello, peoples of the internet. Today, I have another Stairway Mountain time trial. It's week 19 already. Yep, it's been many weeks. And we have a very interesting vehicle here, since the theme today is forgotten vehicles. Basically vehicles I've not had time to do or that haven't really fit into a category, so that's why I'm doing this Case IH Magnum base 380 CVT. Known to the less name-savvy of you as a tractor. Now this one is the base model, as I just said. It's basically got no fancy accessories or extra wide wheels or anything on it. It's just a very basic tractor. I saw this as being the best option since it's probably the lightest, but they all share the engine that almost tipped over there. Which brings us to the problem of it tipping over. I mean, it's got massive tyre sidewall, and really anything with massive tyre sidewall will tip over. It's mainly on the rear, and it can get a bit bouncy at times. There's probably like leaf springs at the rear or something. It's not exactly refined suspension, but if you're careful you can get it round the corners. And other than really maxing out, as you'll see here, 40 miles per hour in this case, it's not too slow round the corners. Here I have a bit of an off, but I do manage to recover it. It's not the final one here, but I had audio problems on the actual quickest one, so I can't use that. Anyway, as you'll see, it's making the corners. I'm going to have a bit of a roll for Britain here, and I think that bent up the steering or something, but I do manage to apply the power early enough and then just recover it again. Not the quickest one, but it shows you just how hard it can be to control. I mean, the times I'm almost tipping this, maybe I'm just not as focused as I should be, but you know, if you're careful, you can get a decent time. In this case, 12:56.62. Remember, it is a tractor though, so that's why the time might appear unimpressive. It is just below the Origa Heron three-wheeler, which was basically a convertible Origa Heron which lost a wheel, and the air trike, it came just above, which, you know, is in that kind of category of slow vehicles that were never meant to go quick but can kind of be surprising for what they are. And I'm happy with the time, you know, just a higher top speed could have really helped this. As you'll see, it still kind of drives here. Now, here we have an interesting vehicle. It's an ETK 6100 camper, which is basically a massive six-wheeler lorry thing with a camper van on the back. The best way I can kind of describe it, it's slow. That's the first way I can put it. Slow and stable. I get the feeling if you threw loads of power through it, it would lose its stability. But because it's so slow, you're never overworking it, and really it's just a very easy drive. So, you see, I can have issues. Very almost hit a sign there. But other than massive understeer, it's a decent vehicle to drive. You know, it will understeer. For 4100, which is basically this without an extra axle, and maybe a different engine, should be interesting. Now, considering just how sluggish this 6100 camper felt, it says surprisingly decent 10:15.71. Yep, almost 2 minutes 40 quicker than the tractor. But let's be honest, we're going 70 miles per hour in this. We can even break the speed limit, as you'll see. Whereas the tractor was throttled to 37, it did 40 if you were lucky. And you'll see here, I think I got the rear wheels on some dirt and it coped with it well. It's a nice cornering thing. It actually corners like an all-wheel drive ETK series. Not what you would think, but it has the same kind of understeer as that car. And crazy as it might seem, you know, it is probably related to it. So it's not all as weird as it might seem. Now, for time, if this ever squirrels properly, it is just below a remote controlled truck Admittedly not that impressive. Remember how heavy it is though. And it's above a T65. Also above a Pigeon 600cc turbo with no stabilisers. And a DW Walk Bouncer, T75 long haul. And you really get that feeling that it's kind of in the utilitarian vehicles, which is actually where it belongs. Here you'll see the lights have got a bit smashed on the way, going over a jump, but the suspension coped with everything fine, and other than the minor knock and bump, this is a rugged vehicle that you don't really need to use the ruggedness of. Now, here we have an interesting vehicle. It's a monster truck. Only I've enabled all-wheel steer, which can get quite chaotic at times, as you've seen there. I mean, it's a very, very powerful vehicle. To be honest, though, it's slightly surprising it beats something as stable as the ETK 6100 camper. As you'll see here, I'm going all over the place. I did have a go later, and I managed to get a quicker time than this by over 20 seconds. Coming up to about 25 seconds quicker, just because I was so careful on that one. More careful than this one. And I literally used a T-Series as a handbrake as opposed to a metal box like I used with this, because, you know, it doesn't have a working handbrake, meaning I had to use what I had available to me. And a T-Series worked well. So, yeah, it's a difficult vehicle. It's just so squirmy and twitchy. You get the feeling everything's okay, but it can snap at any moment. I mean, the suspension's very bouncy. It'll bounce around. As you're seeing here, it's wobbling from left to right. And I even get on the dirt just because it's a big wobbly barge, essentially. It's designed to run over cars and not really hurt the driver. Humans are fragile things, so they need to be taken care of. So that's naturally why it's behaving this way. Although, really, it's not great to drive down a hill. I can't blame them, you know, it maxed out at 60 miles per hour. Because, as I said, it wasn't designed for this kind of activity. Yeah, you know, as I have a run-in with a sign, it's not bad. It's set a 917.08. Probably the quickest car down here with a 60 mile per hour restricted top speed. Same with a tractor. I just feel if we removed that, it could be a lot quicker. Where is 917 then? Yep, we came just below a Shotokan Pessima and just above a Gavril box van. What an achievement! I beat a box van. We should have a sticker on the back to announce how proud we are. The word came along eventually. We also beat a derby bus. So hey, you beat a school bus and a box van. That's not bad. Beat a Pigeon XL as well, so it beat the other unwieldy monster we know of. Which is always nice, you know. It would have come below all of those though. Would have even come below a Roma Flipper if it weren't for the second one I had later on. And this, you will probably recognise a Gavril interior from the D15 or 35 or whatever you call it, but it's actually a slammed pickup truck, slammed Toyota pickup even. The steering wheel is randomly floating in the air, as they do on Toyota pickups, you know, and it tends to get tail happy. Now, I thought this was going to be a lot more troublesome than it actually was. You could easily beach it on some mud or something if you were trying to. The reality of it is though, just going over bumps and things, it may scramble for grip and drift, but it's generally far more controllable than you would think. Even if it loses the rear end, you can normally just quickly counter steer and accelerate and it will balance itself out. So overall, it's nowhere near as horrible to drive as you might think. It does kind of hurt me, I will admit, as someone who likes 90s Japanese cars, to see it turn into this. And I really, for some reason, just think it's fiberglass, but I'm pretty sure it's metal. So yeah, it's got that weight of a Toyota pickup and the engine of a Toyota pickup, and it moves like a Toyota pickup that's got no ground clearance to it. Really what you would expect. If it had all-wheel drive, it may actually handle decently, but you can tell there's just no weight over the rear. It'll probably make a decent drift car. They actually have a drift version of it. And over these bumps, well, it's surprisingly good. I guess because it's just scraping along as opposed to actually bouncing like other cars do. Okay, so if we actually find the right part of my leaderboard, we'll see. It's set a fairly decent time. It's set an 8-minute 58.42 time, which if we look down is around a kind of utilitarian area of the leaderboard again, just below the Jetside Special and just above the H35 ambulance. Remember, that's evidence that this is a fairly controllable thing, because that ambulance, although sluggish, had a lot of cornering ability, far more than you would think for an ambulance. It also beat a D-Series Inline 6 and EcoBoost, both rear-wheel drive. So, what does that say? Maybe by slamming your pickup you can make it quicker. But ultimately it's still slower than a Covet Beta. So basically, don't mess around with cars, you'll only make them slower. Unless they're pickup trucks, then you can mess around with them and make them quicker. As I've bent the steering up and you can see here, on the thingy. Okay, here we have an interior you might recognise. It's just a Gavril Grand Marshal interior. Nothing too fancy here. Although, it's actually a V8 Limousine Grand Marshal. You might not be able to tell by the way it's cornering, and it is ultimately a big floaty barge. As you'll see there, I tried to brake and it's just got too much weight behind it. But it does corner really well actually. It corners car-like even. It just feels a bit like the Square Marshal, I guess, as in it's sluggish, probably because of all the extra weight of the Limousine in the middle of it. And yeah, I have a wall. Proof of how tough this thing is. I just keep going. I mean, it doesn't really affect the time. It might have even made me quicker doing that. And it has bent up the steering a bit, but it still drives incredibly well for what it is. You know? And remember, this beat a fair few cars, as I mentioned, that D-Series. With its 8-minute 20.7 time, it's quick really, considering it's a limousine. It sets a car-like lap time. If I can find it, 8 minutes 20.7 is just above the 90s Pessima base by about 4 seconds, and about 5 seconds below the Sunburst base. So you see it's between a few fairly average Japanese vehicles, also beat a Crown Victoria, which is a car, like a car version of this I guess you could say, and it's a very decent time. I mean, I know it's got a V8, but it's not like it's the world's most powerful V8, it's a kind of Crown Victoria reliable, solid V8 as opposed to outright performance V8. So it's really impressive just the kind of pace you can pick up with this, and it's making all the time back through the corners. This isn't a crazy straight line speed monster. I mean, I believe I struggled to get over 100 miles per hour even. And, you know, it's remarkable. I would never have thought of a limousine as having this kind of pace to it. Also, you know, it's the only limousine. There was a Covet limousine, which I could only find on Russian websites, oddly, and a Moonhawk one, but they're both broken, and I don't use... No, the Moonhawk's broken, and I don't use Russian websites, so... yeah. This is what we're stuck with. I would love to do more of them, though. If people made more, or refreshed the old ones. It had an odd technique here, should I say, of making random bits orange and having no texture. Here it was surprisingly good. Sometimes you've had full windows that are like bright orange with the no texture colour, which is odd. It has got wood on it though, which makes any car better. Okay, so here we have another Toyota actually, the GL83 Land Cruiser. Yep, we've got another off-roader. Only this one's actually still decent off-road. Believe me, I took it off-road. Only it's not an off-road variant, it's a sport variant. It does have decent handling, and the rear suspension can be a bit bouncy. That's the crucial thing to know. The wheels on this, they're some stupidly large sport wheels on run flats, which doesn't suit the vehicle. I know, like, technically you should have chunky off-road tyres, but I tried that version and wanted to tip over even. This just doesn't have the feeling it wants to tip over. It has the feeling it wants to stay static, as you'll see there. If it was the off-road version with a big chunky tyres, it would probably get messed up by that wall, but it did somehow pull itself together. And you can pick up some surprising speed. I mean, the front suspension's great for this stuff, but the rear suspension is not happy. I'm guessing it's a live axle coil or something that's not particularly sporty. It's good at ironing out bumps and things, but it's just not a sport suspension system. Having said that though, for something that's not a sport suspension system, it does help you put the power down quite well as well. And the power, it doesn't sound like much. It's something like 240 horsepower, but that's at the wheels, I think, and it does deploy that power very well, even if it's not the most powerful. And we've seen with certain other cars, power isn't everything. The ability to use that power around corners is also incredibly important, and that's something that this car has, that the off-road variants didn't really have. So, as we'll see, it's quite fast for what it is. And the time it's set, that's an 8-minute 8.63. Like, we're getting properly quick here. It's not that far off the vans, and they're a lot more powerful. Remember, the slower vans are below it, but the proper sport vans. Here you'll see what I mean about the rear suspension though. It can get a bit bouncy. The front suspension is generally quite good at taking it, but the rear suspension just likes to bobble about a lot there. It did beat a Burnside Special V8 race car, which I found to be quite a decent handling vehicle. And it came just below an off-road Vanster. Again, the supercharged engine, but probably taller, more off-roady suspension that would have held that back. Came below a Roma drag as well, and a fair few other drag vehicles. But this vehicle, something that was never really designed as a sports car, I think it's done exceptionally well. I mean, it even beat an ETK base model, and that's like a sporty German car, if not the quickest one. This is a Land Cruiser, remember, and for a Land Cruiser it set a suitably brilliant time. Perhaps if they put a supercharged engine in here or something, it could be very, very fast indeed. Supercharged engine and grippier tyres could turn this into an absolute monster even. It's got no Toyota badging, probably due to licensing reasons, and one of the rear lights got smashed somewhere. But as you'll see, the wheels look stupid, but it is function over form, which is something I quite like. The entire vehicle's kind of function over form. It's not the prettiest car in the world, but everything about it works well. You can see out of it properly as well. Some cars have stupid windscreen pillars and you get no light into the interior, such as the ETK series. That was a very dark car inside. Here we have the Lancia, and speaking of which, it is fairly dark inside. It probably shouldn't be, you know. It's got quite decent windscreen and side windows, lights coming in from the outside, if I'm even making any sense anymore. And this is a quick vehicle. Now, it's a rally vehicle, meaning it's got oversteery brakes, which are meant to be used by the rally drivers, really, to help push it into corners. Now, I'm not a rally driver, so I can't use the brakes. Normally, if I brake into a corner and expect it to oversteer, I'll either make a complete mess of it or it'll understeer on me. If I don't want it to oversteer, it'll oversteer, as you see there. It's a very quick vehicle though. Remember, maybe not the most powerful vehicle in the world, as rally cars are restricted for power, but it has decent handling. And I mean, outside the slidey brakes, which I mean aren't the car's fault, it ties into the purpose of the vehicle. That's the way it drives, you know. And it's still set a good time. 7:23.4 as I roll all kinds of ways with a primitive cracked windscreen. It is just below the Covet Gymkhana. I mean, we're talking 0.35 seconds. The two are very, very close ultimately. Maybe not the most controllable vehicles, but they do have speed when you know how to unlock it. it also came just above the 80s Pessima Custom. Again, a vehicle that has speed. That was actually a fair amount similar to these to drive, as far as I remember. The race version has more grip, but the Custom would struggle for grip here and there. So it's kind of with the all-wheel drive cars that just need a bit more grip. Now, I'm late to this car, but it's a Gavel Bandit Ultra. I was originally going to do the 400X, which is less powerful and really designed more for the track, but I drove this, and at first I was like, hey, it's not too bad. I thought it would understeer loads like most drag vehicles, but it doesn't, and then it does. When I actually get used to it and try and carry that bit more speed around corners, you really realise how understeery it is. It's not as bad as other vehicles, it's not as bouncy as other drag vehicles, and it doesn't have quite as much understeer as them, but it is still ultimately a drag vehicle. You have so much power on demand, and it will grip when you get, just like you'll see here. I can reach almost 150 miles per hour, but I have to brake quite early, since I know I'm not going to be able to carry loads of speed into corners. I know it's going to understeer. And it's just keeping my foot up and resisting putting the power down. It's really the hard thing. I was doing remarkably well by my standards for keeping the power out of the wheels and actually being very careful around corners. If it had chunkier front tyres, it may have been pretty decent around the corners, but I get the feeling they're just not enough. There's not enough there. I mean, it's a remarkably quick car. As you'll see, it's the quickest vehicle we've got here today. Beat Lancia by a good 5 seconds, and that's a feat alone. You know, you beat an all-wheel drive rally car, but it's not as easy as the Lancia. The Lancia had slightly awkward brakes, but as long as you respected that, it wasn't a hugely difficult vehicle to drive, and it absorbed the bumps nicely. This, it's not perfect, you know. It'll understeer massively, under braking, and you know, you can control it, but it's not the easiest thing. Surprisingly, I had a run-in with a wall and the windscreen's gone green, but I'm still driving fine, so I continue. This coats the bumps well for what it is. I mean, you'd think being a drag vehicle it would bounce, but it's far from as bad as other drag vehicles. Probably what earned it a much better time. I believe it's the fastest drag vehicle we've had down the hill, but you know, it may have been slightly hindered by the windscreen going green and kind of camouflaging everything, so it was so hard to see out of. But with a 7:18.36 time, it is very fast. Came just below a CVT Sunburst race and just above an ETK 2400i TT Sport Evolution. So that's with some of the better rear-wheel drive cars. It also came very, very slightly below the ETK Rocket 900, which was our previous champion. So it really proves how, with more vehicles I've tested, things have really moved on, and we now have a vehicle like this that can perform so well, which is surprising. Anyway, I need to stop waffling now. It's the end of the video, so thanks for watching, and goodbye until another day.